What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Adventure Outpost. Another weekend has come and gone, and it is once again time to talk those juicy box office numbers. I know we missed last week. I ended up getting sick, and I just had no energy or anything to be able to do it, so we took the weekend off. But we're back this weekend, and we're going in strong. We had another very interesting weekend. March has just been chock full of interesting weekends with a franchise best of Creed the first weekend, a franchise best of Scream the next weekend, and then now we had the release of Shazam, which has also made headlines, but probably for all the wrong reasons. And we're going to dive into all of that here today. As always, we start off with our 2023 box office outlook to see just how well we've been doing week over week. We take a look here at this chart real quick. As you can see here in our week number 11th, we are in the 11th week of the year. We have made 87 million in the top 10 this weekend for a 23.2% drop off from the previous weekend. As you look and you see week 9 and 10, we were on the uptick. We were doing good. We were debuting numbers. We were making franchise history bests, but Shazam was not able to do it, and we took a nice big huge decrease there. Shazam has fallen in wildly under projections. I mean, they weren't even expecting it to get anywhere close to the first one. The first one debuted to about 50 million its opening weekend, and now this one was forecasted to do about 35 to 40 million. It came in on even worse than that, and we're going to dive into all that stuff, and we're going to take a look at it right now as we dive into our top 10. Now, for the weekend of March 17th to March 19th, Shazam! Fury of the Gods still managed to take number one. It managed to be the number one movie in March, making sure that so far every weekend in March we have had a new movie be crowned champion, but the numbers do not look good for sure. Shazam! Fury of the Gods, it is number one, but it managed to only make $30 million. Projections were saying 35 to 40. It comes in even under that at only $30 million of a $125 million budget. This is not a good sign for Shazam. This is not very helpful for it. When I was making my bets to see what movies were going to be domestic blockbuster movies, I put Shazam on there as a sure bet. I was sure that this movie would easily make $100 million. That is in doubt right now. That is no longer as clear cut as we thought it would be. Only making $30 million on its debut, and we got big movies continuing to drop week over week. So this movie, unless it somehow magically has some great holdover and ends up having some solid legs, does not look like it's even going to make it to the $100 million mark, and that is crazy to think about. Obviously, there's a lot of factors when you go in to look at a movie like this. It just did not have the buzz that the original movie did. The original movie had, I think it was like an A cinema score. This one has a B+. Usually when you have anything underneath an A, it does not have as great a legs for an audience as you're hoping for here in the box office. It also doesn't help with all of the crazy behind the scenes stuff going on over at DC, all the shuffling of all the players, so many new people coming in, James Gunn coming in and basically just wiping the slate clean, effectively leaving movies like Shazam and Aquaman, struggling to make some money now, because why should people care? I mean, the inverse to that is you should care because it's still a movie. Like, it's still an enjoyable movie that you should go see. Who gives a fuck if it connects to something larger? But we're at that point in our movie-going experience right now where franchises are king. That is what everyone looks for. People want more than just one thing. They want things to expand into a whole universe, into a whole world. So pretty much effectively saying that movies like Shazam and Aquaman are going to be rendered inert now that they're going to wholly just pretty much reboot the entire DCEU. Movies like that are now suffering. We see it here now with a $30 million debut off of a first movie that did almost 50 million. So it's a shame to see. The movie's still solid. I saw it over the weekend. It's decent. To me, I would say it's about on par with the first one. They're just enjoyable movies. They're not anything that's gonna like change your mind or blow your mind, but they're solid movies, and it's a shame to see that it has a debut like this, because this movie does actually deserve to still have a nice, healthy box office life. But just goes to show you, man, the box office doesn't give a fuck what you expect. It's going to do what it does best, and that's just wholly ruin your expectations. In second place, we've got Scream 6 having, my lordy lord, the classic horror drop-off from week to week. It dropped 60.6%. It takes in $17 million to bring its total domestic haul to $76 million off a $35 million budget. Pretty much printed money, all but assured we're going to get a Scream 7. The question now is, how much money does this movie have to make? Will it pass the Scream 5 total, I think, which is around 85 million. I think it's all but assured that it's going to pass that. The question then remains is how much further does it have to go? Will it pass the other Scream movies in the franchise? Will it be able to make $100 million domestically? That all remains to be seen. In third place, we've got Creed 3 dropping 43.6%, taking in $15 million to bring its total domestic haul to $127 million off of a $75 million budget. This movie also just printing money right now. Absolutely huge debut when it debuted 3 weeks ago, and it has continued to hold over very strongly and just add a lot of money to its total. Creed 3 is a rounding success that everybody should be extremely proud of. In fourth place, we've got 65 in its second week, dropping 53%, taking in $5.8 million to bring its total domestic haul to $22 million off of a $45 million budget. Sony, this one just doesn't have the legs, does not look like it's even going to be able to make its return on investment. This movie is going to be a resounding misfire, which is such a shame because I was expecting so much good stuff from this movie. I was so excited for this movie, and I remember seeing the movie and not outright hating it, but just going, how do you fuck up Adam Driver versus dinosaurs? But they found a way. And rounding out the top 5, crazy to think how quickly and just on just an immaculate level has this movie just like teetered down the top 5. We have Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania in its fifth week, dropping 42.9%, taking in $4 million to bring its total domestic haul to $205 million off of a $200 million budget. Just managing right now to squeak past its initial budget, and this doesn't even take into account all the marketing and everything. This movie is crazy just how fucking bad it did. I know if you look at your worldwide totals, it's a little bit better. It's probably just about to start making profit at this point, but that is crazy for a movie that they expected to kickstart Phase 5, to kickstart the next big bad, that they are looking at such a terrible return on investment here. There you haven't even passed Ant-Man and the Wasp yet. Like, that's just really goes to show just how much audiences are not digging this movie. Then we take a look at our back 5 here. In sixth place, we've got Cocaine Bear in its fourth week, dropping 38.1%, taking in $3.8 million to bring its total domestic haul to 58 off of a $30 million budget. Universal just absolutely just crushing it right now in the mid-budget hits this year. Let's hope they can continue that fucking just journey next month with Renfield coming out. They just keep making these mid-budget movies that just do fucking fantastic business here at the box office. Following right behind that in seventh place, we've got Jesus Revolution in its fourth week, dropping 31.8%. It takes in $3.5 million to bring its total domestic haul to $45 million off of a $15 million budget. Lionsgate must just be slapping themselves in the back right now to be having a hit like this. This movie is just doing gangbusters. In eighth place, we've got Champions in week 2, dropping 41.2%, takes in $3 million to bring its total domestic haul to $10 million off of a $6 million budget. Having a low budget's really helping this movie make itself a little bit of profit here, as this movie is just failing to capture with audiences. It's making just enough to make the movie worthwhile putting out in theaters, but it does not look like it's going to be that much of a big hit for them. And then we get into the 2 big movies. These movies still holding over so fucking strong from last year. It is absolutely insane. In ninth place, Avatar: The Way of Water in its 14th week, dropping 27.4%, takes in $1.9 million, bringing its total domestic haul to $678 million of a $460 million budget. And then in 10th place, Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, despite being on streaming, despite being on physical media, in its 13th week, drops only 13.8%. That is fucking absurd. It takes in $1.5 million to bring its total domestic haul to $182 million off of a $90 million budget. Now, as always, we like to take a look at our top 10 worldwide and domestic for the year. I'm going to pump the brakes on watching along with 2022. I'll pretty much just go over it quickly with you guys, because obviously Avatar's still in theaters, so we're still chugging along with it. But week after week, we're literally just looking at it in first place, adding money. So it's not entirely necessary to continue to keep going back to that unless like something absolutely insane happens, which I don't think it's going to this late in the game. But I think it's safe to say that in the top 10 worldwide for 2022, Avatar is the top dog. It's remaining the top dog. It keeps adding on its total. Right now it's at $2.3 billion. It still has a ways to go before it reaches Avengers Endgame, but it's insane that this movie is still continuing to make money hand over fist week after week, 14 weeks later. But we will take a look at our top 10 worldwide for 2023. We take a look here at this chart. In first place, we've got Full River Red at $671 million. The Wandering Earth 2 in second place with $600 million. Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania worldwide has at least managed to make $462 million. Still definitely not what they were hoping for from this movie. They were looking for these movies to... probably hoping for this movie to kickstart them back into the $1 billion club, and that is just not the case here. This movie looks like it's going to struggle to even make it past 500. In fourth place, we've got Creed 3 with $224 million. Boonie Bears rounding out the top 5 with $217 million. Megan in sixth with $175. We've got Hidden Blade with $136. Deep Sea with $134. Python with $130. And Scream 6 debuts on the top 10 here with $116 million worldwide, knocking out the movie that I continue to pronounce incorrectly probably week after week. It's finally out of here. This will probably be the last week I'll have to mispronounce it. Cheparashka. I apologize if I continue to just absolutely butcher that. Now, on the domestic front for 2022, we won't take a look at that either, obviously, because again, we're just looking at Avatar trying to overtake Top Gun, but it's still got a ways to go. It is inching itself closer. Still don't think it's going to get there. One that we will continue to keep looking, though, that might have a chance is Puss in Boots is in the 10th spot right now with $182 million. Not too far off from 9th place, where Sonic the Hedgehog 2 currently sits with $190 million. So if Puss in Boots continues to have this amazing holdover week after week, we might see a scenario where we'll go back to the chart and we'll see Puss in Boots take the 9th spot for top 10 domestic of 2022. But that'll be something that I'll keep an eye at, and if it happens, I'll show it off. We won't obviously just keep going back to the chart week after week, because we're pretty much just looking at totals week after week that nothing has moved any spots, so it's not as exciting, but we will go back to it if there is any crazy shakeups. But we will take a look, obviously, at our top 10 domestic for 2023. In first place is Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania with $205 million. Creed 3 in second with $127. Megan in third with $95 million. Scream 6th with $76 million. Cocaine Bear with $58 million. Jesus Revolution with $45 million. 80 for Brady with $39 million. Knock at the Cabin with $35. Missing with $32. And Plane just behind that with $32.1. Now, as always, we'd like to take a look at our fallen heroes. These are our heroes that did their time in the top 10 but have bowed out for greener passages. We have only one movie this week bowing out of the top 10. Everything pretty much just shifted one spot for this week in the top 10. Shazam came in at 1, and everybody else just like went over 1. So in the 10th spot from last week, bowing out this week, we take a look here at the chart and we say goodbye to Operation Fortune Ruse de Guerre. After 2 weeks on the chart, is bowing out. You did your time, you had your say, you made your money, but it's time for you to bow out. We will see you on physical media and in the world of streaming, and as always, we salute you. Now, 2 more charts that we usually take a look at that we are going to skip over this week, simply because there really isn't much of a change for anyone to look at here, and that is, again, our highest worldwide grossers of all time and the highest domestic grossers of all time. We've been charting along with Avatar. Avatar's not moving at this point. It's sitting firmly in the spot that it's in, at least worldwide. Worldwide, it's going to stay in the 3rd spot. There's no way at this point it's going to pass Avengers Endgame with $2.7 billion. And so we're just going to keep looking at the amount of money that it's making. And at this point, I won't show this chart again until Avatar is finally about out of theaters and it has its final gross that it's made. But for right now, it's in its 3rd spot. It's at 2.3 million. Hell of a ways still to go if it wants to pass 2.7 million of Avengers Endgame. Definitely not going to do it at this point, but we will keep watching along and see where those final totals end up being. But we will, however, quickly take a look at the highest domestic grossers of all time, because Avatar is quickly about to pass another movie, probably within the next week, if it manages to stay in at least a couple of theaters this week. We lost it at my theater this past week, finally. So after 14 weeks, it's finally gone from my theater. But I'm sure some of the bigger theaters that have huge amounts of screens probably still have this movie. So this movie, probably by next week, and probably by right now while we're talking about this, has passed this movie. So we'll quickly take a look here at the highest domestic grossers of all time. And if you look right there in 8th place, Avatar: The Way of Water is sitting there with $678 million, $114,000, and $154. If you look right above that, a few $100,000 off, you have Avengers: Infinity War with $678 million, $815,000, $482. So these 2 movies are neck and neck right now, and probably as we're talking, probably within the next few days, rather, Avatar: The Way of Water is going to pass Avengers: Infinity War to be the 7th highest grossing domestic movie of all time. Does it have any more in the tank after that to pass Black Panther's $700,000? I don't think so, but again, as we've said time and time again, never discount Avatar and the shit that James Cameron can do. I don't think it's going to pass 700, but who knows at this point? We'll see what happens. Now we have one last chart to take a look at, and that is our 2023 chart riders. These are our people that are hanging out here in the top 10 for the longest amount of time. We want to see who has the best legs this year. We take a look here at our chart. I know I have it up there as top 10 chart riders, but for right now, with so many movies coming out, we're just charting along with each movie as it comes out. And as everything starts to form later in the year, we'll eventually start to solidify our top 10 and see what's got the best legs. But for right now, we'll start here all the way at the bottom. Champion, 65, and Scream all be released last week, continue to hang out in the top 10, so they are all at 2 weeks now in the top 10. Operation Fortune bowed out, so it is locked in now at 2 weeks, so it's fair to say that Operation Fortune will not be hanging out in this chart come the middle of the year and towards the end of the year. Creed 3 hangs around again, so it is now 3 weeks here in the top 10. You got Jesus Revolution and Cocaine Bear, both now with 4 weeks in the top 10. Right above that, Knock at the Cabin and Magic Mike's Last Dance are locked in at 4 weeks, so it's safe to say that, barring any insanity this weekend in the top 10, Cocaine Bear and Jesus Revolution are both going to be passing that movie, those two movies, to end up on there, and I'm sure that by the end of this year, those movies will be knocked out of the top 10 as well. Right ahead of that, Ant-Man and the Wasp now has spent 5 weeks here in the top 10. It is now tied with 80 for Brady and Plane at 5 weeks. Those two are both locked in at 5, so I'm sure Ant-Man and the Wasp will be passing those come next week. And then you look right ahead of that, it only has another week to go before it passes 2 more movies that are locked in at 6 weeks, which is Missing and Megan. You got right there then after that in the top 3, A Man Called Otto, locked in at 8 weeks right now. That is a very solid performance for that movie. And then the 2 highest fucking chart riders here, the movies that have had the best legs so far in 2023, are movies that came out last fucking year. It is insane that we are 11 weeks into the year and these 2 movies have continued to stay in the top 10. It'll be interesting to see what happens this weekend, considering they were both at the 9 and 10 position. So is any of them going to be knocked out with the introduction of John Wick Chapter 4 this weekend? What's going to happen here in the top 10? Are they going to do any great holdovers where maybe something else gets booted after that? It's going to be interesting to see. But right now, number 1 and 2, Avatar: The Way of Water and Puss in Boots, both at 11 weeks in the top 10 chart riders. It is going to be very interesting to see if any movies are able to come close to that. 11 weeks in the top 10. As you know, as we start to get later into the years, you start to get into the blockbuster months of the summer and then into the months of the fall, which are Academy Award movies. 11 weeks in the top 10, that is a tough ask. That is a tough thing to do. So it's going to be interesting to see what movies, if any, are able to have those legs. It'll be crazy to think if by the end of this year, Avatar and Puss in Boots are still in this top 10 simply because they dominated the winter. And that's going to be an awesome thing to keep charting and keep looking out for. And then one last thing to take a look at. We look here at my blockbuster status chart. This is my chart for the movies that I had said are going to make $100 million domestically here at the box office. You look here at this chart. These movies, so not all of them, my first 2 lines were my sure bets. My third line there was all of the movies. So if you look, Ant-Man to Aquaman were my sure bets. Elemental to Ghostbusters were my, those seem about right that they can do it. And then the Book Club to Kraven the Hunter were my outside dark horses. They're like, I needed more information. There was no trailers or anything. I was basically just going off gut hunch and past performances. So these were the movies that I said this year were going to make $100 million domestically at the box office. If you look, you see I didn't put Scream. I always say that horror movies have those huge drop-offs. Scream 6 did have that huge drop-off this week, but so far it's charting pretty solidly to the first one. The first one ended up about 86 million, so I'm wondering if this movie, the new one, Scream 6, is going to end up just under 100, or if I'm going to have my first misfire and Scream is going to end up joining the list. I think I'm going to have my first misfire anyway here, because if you look under Creed 3, I said Shazam was going to end up being a sure bet here, and as we said before and looked at its debut in the chart, it does not look like that is such a sure case anymore. Shazam needs to have a stellar next few weeks with some good holdovers for that movie to have any shot at passing 100 million. So I might have my first 1-2 misfire here with missing up on Scream and Shazam. I really should have put Scream there, hopeful, and just fucking left Shazam off that, or at least put it over in my outside bet ones. But it is crazy to think that I am at this point right now where we're this early in the year and I'm going to have my first misfire already. But that just goes to show the box office, they are a finicky motherfucker. They will do whatever you're not expecting. They will always take a movie that you expected not to get it and is going to get shot out of there. I expected Dungeons and Dragons to be the big box office bomb of March, and it looks like Shazam is actually going to be that. From the positive word of mouth that Dungeons and Dragons has been having, it looks like that one I'm going to be wildly off the mark with as well. So it's going to be interesting to watch the rest of March and see just where these movies end up lying and see what happens, see if anyone's able to pull out one last hat trick for me and see if Shazam might actually be able to make it over 100 million. But I am not hopeful. And that'll do it for all of us here this week here at the chart. It was another stellar weekend. March has been a wild ride to watch so far. I love every Sunday when I get to finally see the box office totals popped up there and see just what did what. It's just crazy. This past weekend, at least at my theater, was nice and quiet. Friday, of course, St. Patrick's Day, so I'm sure everybody was out and about partying. So Friday was not particularly busy for any movie over there at my theater. Saturday Night Fever was a little bit busy, but Shazam was not the big one for it. It was still holdovers from Scream and Creed 3, so Shazam really is just not capturing audiences. It's not pulling people in. So I don't know what they did wrong in the marketing or whatever. I think a huge thing has to be everything going on behind the scenes with the DCEU. I think probably turned a lot of people off from going to see this movie. So it is a huge shame that Shazam had such a lackluster weekend here at the box office, but that was the past. We look ahead now. This weekend, we've got John Wick Chapter 4 coming out. I believe the Zach Braff movie, A Good Person, comes out as well. I don't know if that's getting a wide release or just certain theaters, but I know that one is coming out as well. So it will be interesting to see what happens. There's so many interesting stories going forward for this weekend at the box office. Are we going to have another new #1 movie with John Wick? What's going to be the holdovers for Shazam, Scream, and Creed? Will Avatar and Puss in Boots manage to hang out in the top 10 and beat out some of the other movies that are falling over there? How much further is Ant-Man going to fall for Marvel? It is such an interesting time here at the box office right now with so many amazing stories going on. So I look forward to seeing you guys right back here next weekend when we discuss the answers to all of those immaculate questions. But that'll do it for all of us here at the Outpost today. Until next adventure, you have been you, I have been me. These are the movies that we love so much. And until next time, I'll see you at the movies.